G'day so-and-sos, welcome to my sewing room. My name's Kathy and I have another fun bag for us to make this week. Now, I did this bag and the video with the beginner in mind. So if you're a beginner bag maker or new to sewing in general, then I hope that you find this tutorial really easy to do and easy to follow along with. For you more experienced peeps, you're just going to be able to smash this out really easily. So this is another one of those bags that's just a couple of pieces of fabric. We've got 2 rectangles for the outside, 2 for the inside, and then we have just 1 zipper with a zipper pocket on the inside, which if you didn't want to do, or if you just wanted to make yourself a slip pocket instead, then you could do that really easily. And our shape comes from these pleats that are on the front and back, and our boxed corners, which give us a nice wide bottom. So if you haven't done a whole lot of bag making before, you're going to learn a lot from doing this bag and you're going to end up with something super cute at the end. Okay, well, I'm ready to get going, so let's get cracking. Okay, let's have a look at what we need for today's project. So, good size cutting mat, couple of different sized acrylic rulers, scissors, rotary cutter, snippers. I've got pins and clips. I'll be using double-sided sticky tape to help me install my zipper, but if you don't have any, you can just use your pins. A couple of different marking tools, seam ripper, something to turn out my work, and some zipper tape, and the measurements will be in the description box along with the measurements of the fabric that we need. And talking of which, let's have a look at the fabric. Let's have a look at my fabrics, sizing and interfacing. Now the sizing and the pieces will all be in the description box, as well as what interfacing I've used with each bit. So make sure you go there and you write it all down, but we'll go over it quickly here as well. So out of my exterior fabric, I have cut my 2 exterior pieces and I've interfaced them with the light fusible fleece, and these are 19 by 12 inches and I've cut 2. Then I have my handles, same out of the exterior fabric with the fusible fleece, and my handles are 12.5 by 5.5 inches. Then I have my zipper pocket. Now usually I would have cut this out of the same fabric as my lining, but it'll be easier for you guys to see if I use something with a pattern on it, and you'll see why later, just trust me for now. But if you're cutting it out, then think about if you want to use your lining fabric or not. And my zipper pocket is 10.5 by 12 inches, and I've interfaced that with a light iron-on interfacing. And then I have my 2 lining pieces. Now these guys are a little bit bigger than the outer pieces. These are 19 by 14.5. And I've interfaced them with a light iron-on interfacing, and of course I've cut 2 of them. So let's have a look at how we shape our exterior pieces. So let's work on these one at a time. So I'll pop one to the side. Then I'm going to grab my small ruler and I'm going to figure out which way is the top of my fabric and which is my bottom. So I'm going to go off these tulip shapes and decide that they are pointing upwards. So that is the top and this is the bottom. So if you're using something with a pattern that's kind of obscure like mine, have a little think about that. So I'm going to measure 1.5 inches from the bottom corner in, and then 1.5 inches from this corner, like that, and give myself a bit of a mark. And I'll grab my long ruler and I'll line up the top edge, top corner of my piece to that mark. Now, if you want to, you can draw a line with your chalk and then use scissors. But I'm just going to snip that off. And then same thing on this side. I'll turn it around so I'm not cutting towards me, that I'm cutting away. Like that. Then I'll orientate it back that way so that the top edge, which is now my longer edge, is at the top and my shorter edge is at the bottom. and we'll look at these bottom corners. So this angle might be a little bit easier to see what I'm doing and what I mean. So again, up here is the long edge of my fabric, down here is the bottom edge of my fabric, and we're going to look at shaping these corners. Now we want to come in 2.5 inches. So I'll turn this over that way, move you back a little bit. So I'm going to line up my ruler at the 2.5 inch mark here and here. So I've got 2.5 inches down here and 2.5 inches here. Don't worry about the fact that it doesn't line up along there. We're not too worried about that. And I'm going to give myself a chalk mark like that. So I've got 2.5 inches up and 2.5 inches across. Now what I'm going to do is just measure up from this top line 1/4 inch, which is there. So I'm just going 1/4 inch above that line. And then I'm going to take that line and join it up with this corner. So it gives me a bit of an angled line on that side. So now I've got 2.5 up, 2.5 over, but I've gone up 1/4 inch and just come down like that. Okay, now I'm going to grab my scissors and I'm just going to cut this corner out now. There, and across that top angled line that I did. Like that. So it's one of my corners done. Then I'm just going to fold it in half, making sure the top edge is lined up nicely. That side is lined up. Grab my chalk, use that side as a template. Open that up and then cut that side out. And then that is that piece all shaped. So I'll get those out of the way. Now I'm going to use this as a template for my other piece. Last bit. Cool. So there's my pieces shaped. Now what we're going to do is make our markings for the pleats. So what I'm going to do is take my piece, fold it in half and give myself a little snip at the top and at the bottom, like that, to mark my centers. Then I'm going to grab my little ruler, and from this center snip I am going to measure across 1.5 inches to my right and give myself a mark there. Then from that 1.5 inch mark, I'll then measure over 2 inches. And then from that 2 inch mark, I will measure over 1.5 inches. So I've got 1.5, then from there I've got 2, and then from there I've got 1.5. Same thing on the other side. Starting from my center snip, measure over 1.5 inches, and then from that 1.5 inch line I'll measure over 2 inches, Then from that 2-inch line, I'll measure over 1.5 inches. So I'm just going to double check myself using my grid that I can see that is 1.5, and that is 2 from there, and then another 1.5 either direction. Now I've got my iron heating up, so I'll just grab my iron. There we go, and I'll grab some clips handy as well. Cool. Now what I'm going to do is take this first 1.5 inch line that's closest to my center snip, and I'm going to fold it in to meet that center snip, like that. Now, as we do this, your fabric is going to want to curve up like that. Let it. Don't try and have it straight where then you can see that back piece there. We actually want to let it curve where it wants to go. So that 1.5 inch line to that center snip, and then give that a bit of an iron till about the halfway mark, like that. Then I will take the other 1.5 inch line, which just disappeared because I ironed over it. So I'll just pop that back on there. There we go. It's an erasable pen, so I guess heat gets rid of it. So take that 1.5 inch line and fold it into the center. Like that. And you can see that we're already getting our shape. Give that a bit of an iron, and then whack a clip on that first pleat there. Cool. Now we're going to take our very last line and fold it in to our second line. So our last 1.5, we'll fold it into that 2-inch line. I can just still see them. There. So these pens are actually, I mean, it's a bit of a pain because now I can't see my marks, but they might actually be good as fabric pens if they come off that easily. It is a Pilot friction erasable pen, and it was just what was handy there, so that I grabbed it. Okay, then on the other side I'll do the same thing. I will take that last line and fold it into the second line. There, pinch that, fold it there, let that fabric sort of curve around a little bit, and give that a bit of a hit there. Cool. There we go, and that will be the shape of our exterior. Now I'll do the other one exactly the same. Ironing down to around that halfway mark and whacking some clips on there. It reminds me of ironing my netball skirts in high school. You know, the ones that had like a million pleats on them? There we go. Okay, so that is our shape. Now what we're going to do is take these over to the sewing machine, and we are just going to baste down these pleats, which means that we're just going to sew really close to that top edge and just across where those pleats are, just to hold them in place. Okay, so my stitch length is around a 3.5, starting up on that pleat up the back there, and I'm making sure that my fabric is still curving how it wanted to. Little back stitch, and I'm going to hold these pleats in place with my little purple thing so I don't get my fingers near there, and up over this one. Hold that pleat down. Don't let your fingers get anywhere near that needle. If you don't have one of these purple things, then you could use a pen or a pen with the lid on, or a screwdriver or something like that. I prefer to always use something plastic in case it does hit that needle. Because if it hits metal, the needle will break. And then this one exactly the same. So I'll get that in place, drop my needle, and little back stitch. Now, like I said, all of this will get caught up in the seam allowance later as well. And then up over the last one, little back stitch, and they are done. Before we move on, I want to give a quick shout out to a couple of viewers that sent me photos of bags they made from these videos. So Tanya and Donna. And Tanya, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Correct me if I'm not, let me know. So Tanya made the circle bag. And what I really love about what she did is her choice of fabric. So that bag doesn't have a whole lot of detail. We didn't add on a heap of extra pockets or zippers or anything like that. But with her choice of fabric, she's added a lot of detail to that bag. So it was a very clever choice. And then Donna made the corner patch tote bag that we did a few weeks ago. And Donna once again has nailed it. She has lined up those corner patches so well, much better than what I did when I made the video. And it's that attention to detail that really is great practice and makes you a great bag maker. Okay, let's move on to the next bit. So there's my exterior all sewn down with those pleats, and it's looking really cute. Now we're going to shape our lining, and we're going to use the exterior pieces as a template. So I'm going to pop one of them out of the way and one of my lining pieces out of the way for now. And we are going to have our lining piece in front of us, and I'm going to have it right side up, so pretty side up. Now this will really help you if you're using a lining with a pattern, because you want to make sure that your pattern is going to be even. If you're using a plain one like me, then you're sweet. Okay, we're going to grab one of our exterior pieces and just lay it down on top of that lining. Now I'm going to let those pleats sort of come out and sit where they want to sit. I'm not going to try and smooth it all out. That's why we sort of iron those pleats down halfway so that that bottom edge, it still has that nice curve to it. And get that laying nicely on there. And this is why our lining piece was a little bit bigger, because we now have that curve. So we need a bit slightly bigger fabric. I'm going to grab my chalk and I'm just going to draw an outline around this exterior piece. Like that. Don't drive yourself nuts with it. Try and be as even as you can, of course, especially in these corners. We want the corners to match up. But don't make yourself crazy. It'll all work out. She'll be right. Okay, take the exterior off, and then I'm going to use my scissors to cut that out. And when I'm cutting, I'm laying the back of my scissors flat against my table and moving that top blade as I go. And how pretty are my new scissors? They're purple. Hide your good scissors from your family. They will use them to cut everything, and nothing will wreck your scissors quicker than cutting paper or anything like that with them. So fabric scissors are only for fabric. Okay, and this bottom edge. And then I'm going to use this piece as a template for my other lining piece. So both my lining pieces will then be exactly the same. Gorgeous. Last bit. Cool. Okay, so then we have our lining pieces nice and shaped. Now let's look at getting these straps ready for sewing. So what we're going to do is take our straps, going to place it right side down on the table in front of me, so pretty side down. Then I'm going to measure along one of the long edges about 3/8 of an inch from that long edge, give myself a line, and then same thing on the other side, about 3/8 of an inch, and give myself a line. Then grab my ironing mat, and then I'm just going to fold that up and iron along those edges. So I'm just ironing up those raw edges. Now, because I've already interfaced it with fusible fleece, it's not going to sit and hold exactly for me, but it's definitely going to give me a good crease to work with. And then the other side, just fold that up and give myself a bit of a crease to work with. Then I'm going to fold the whole shebang in half. So like that, and line up those edges that I just ironed. And then iron that whole thing. Cool. Now we're not worrying about the raw edges on the ends at this stage because they will get caught up when we sew the whole thing together. And then I'll wax some clips along that edge, and I will do exactly the same thing to the other one, and then we'll take it over to the sewing machine and we'll sew around all four sides. So that's what you'll look like. Cool. I'll do the other one, get it ready, and then we'll take it over and stitch it down. Okay, let's go get those edges all sewn down. Now this time we're top stitching, so I'm going to lengthen my stitch length to around 4.5. And top stitching just means that we're stitching on top of the fabric rather than doing a seam or something like that. Okay, so nice and close to the edge, I'm about 1/8 of an inch away from that edge, and I'm starting on the folded edge. And carefully just work my way down this side. Now I'm lining up this part of the fabric with the middle of the foot, of this side of the foot. I'm not watching my needle, I'm watching the fabric as it sort of lines up in the middle of that foot. Get this folded edge done first, just as I need to. And then I'll just work my way all the way around. Needle in my work before I pivot. And then I will do the other piece exactly the same. This last little bit, back stitch at the end, done. So there's our straps sewn down. Now we're going to do the second part of this. So I'm going to have a look and see which is my top side and which is my back side. Now you'll be able to see because your stitches will just look a little bit neater maybe on the front side as opposed to the back. And if you have a look at the back side, it's a little bit more of a bump there maybe on the seam, where the flat side looks a little bit, the front side looks a little bit flatter. Don't drive yourself nuts trying to figure that out. If you can't tell the difference, then no one else is going to be able to either. It's just sometimes a little bit more obvious with some threads and some fabrics. So I'm going to find my center and give myself a crease. And then from that center, and the front side and back side I'll play in a minute, I haven't forgotten. I'm going to measure 3 inches to the right from that center mark, and then 3 inches to the left of that center mark. I'm going to make a mark at the top and bottom of my fabric. So on the back side, I've got a mark at the center, and then a mark 3 inches in one direction and then 3 inches in the other direction. Now I'm going to grab my clips and I'm going to fold my strap in half on those marks, folding it so the front side is on the outside and the back side is the folded part. So I'm going to line up those center marks, whack a clip in, on, find the 3 inch marks to the left, whack a clip there, right on that mark, and then a clip on the one to the right, like that. So that's what it'll look like. Okay, and then same thing with the other one. Fold it in half, find which is the front and which is the back, and I'll mark on the back at that center. And then from that center, I'll measure 3 inches to the right, 1, 2, 3 inches to the left, give myself a mark top and bottom so I can see them easily. Fold it in half, wrong sides together, so the back side together, and clip in the center and clip at that mark, and clip at the other mark. Now when I do this, because we're going to take it over to the sewing machine and we're just going to sew along that clipped part and then leave this bit open. So when I've whacked my clips on, I've done it so that the outside of my clip here is lined up right on that mark, so that when I sew, I know that I can start right where the edge of that clip is and go over, just so it's all even all the way across. Okay, let's take those over to the sewing machine and stitch that down. My stitch length is still around 4.5, and I'm going to start right on the edge of where that clip is. So I'm going to keep my eye on that point, pop my work under there, needle down, foot down, and just sew down along those existing stitches. I'm going to back stitch. So just trying to keep it on where those stitches already are. And I want to sew up to here. So I'll mark that with my little purple thing. One more, and back stitch. And then the other one, exactly the same. So there's our handles all sewn down. Now we're going to clip them to our exterior. So I'll work on these one at a time. So I'm going to have my exterior piece right sides up, grab one of my handles, and I've got my handle so that these open edgy bits are facing up. So that's the folded sewn over edge there, and that's that nice curved edge. So that side is facing up. I'm going to place it along the top of my fabric so that the inside of that handle is lined up with that last pleat, and whack a couple clips on there. And then same thing with this end. Line it up so the inside of that handle is lined up with that last pleat. Now it will pull at your exterior a little bit, it won't all lay flat, and that's fine. Like that. So just make sure that you do have your handle facing up the right way. Now I'll do the other one exactly the same. So if you need to watch that a few times over, then that's fine. I'll timestamp all of this, so if you do need to watch bits over a few times, you'll be able to. So I've designed this video with the beginner in mind. Okay, and then other end inside of that handle with that last pleat and some clips. So if you're a more experienced bag sewer, you'll be able to just zip through this one. Cool, now let's take this over to the sewing machine, and we're just going to sew down along that top edge just to hold our handle in place. So when we flip that over, when the bag's made, we're going to have this nice edge on the outside. Okay, let's do that. Okay, let's get these handles on. So I'm going to shorten my stitch length to around 3.5. And I'm just going to sew up nice and close to that edge. So around, I don't know, 1/4 inch or so. And a little back stitch, and then back. And all the way up to the edge, and back stitch. Okay, and all the other ones exactly the same. Where are my snippers? Okay, so now we're going to do our zipper box. So I've got one of my lining pieces and I'm going to find my centers just the same way as what we did before. I'm going to line it up and give myself a snip at the top and at the bottom to mark my centers, just like that. Then I'm going to place it right side down in front of me, so pretty side down. Grab my ruler and from that center snip, I'm going to measure down 2.5 inches from this center mark. So 2.5 down. Now it's important that my box is level. So what I'm also looking at is this top bit here, which is at the 2.25 inch mark, and this top point here, which is at 2.25 inches. So I know when I draw my line, it's going to be even. Okay, so I'm going to draw a line 3.5 inches to the right and 3.5 inches to the left. So then I have a 7-inch line, which is centered, which means it's smack bang in the middle. Then from that line, I'm going to measure down 1/2 inch and just do a parallel line like that. Then I'm going to join up the ends on that end and then on this end. Cool. Now from this bottom edge, I'm going to measure up 1/4 inch and give myself another line, which just means I'm giving myself another line smack bang in the middle. And then I'll sketch in some little triangles. And there is our zipper box. Now I'm going to flip him round. This time I'm going to measure down 1.5 inches on the front from the center. So I've got 1.5 inches down. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to look up here at my points and make sure they're both on the same. So they're both at that 3.5 mark, or 3.25, sorry. I'm just going to make sure that's even so that this is going to be straight. Cool. Then I'm going to grab my zipper pocket, and this is why I chose to use a piece with a pattern on it so that I could show you a bit easier. I'm going to find one of the shorter ends and I'm going to find my centers so that I can be nice and exact. There we go. Find my center on one of my short ends and I'm going to place it so that that center snip is lined up with the center snip on my lining. Now they are right sides together. So that means my lining piece is pretty side up facing me and my pocket piece is pretty side down. Cool. So I can see the back of it. Then I'm going to whack some clips in. Not clips. What are these sharp things called? Pins. Do that every time. Cool. And then one down here. So then we're going to take that over to the sewing machine and we're going to sew down around the outside of our zipper box. Okay, so I'm going to shorten my stitch length to around a 3. And I'll explain why in a minute. And I'm just going to pop my foot down so that I can drop that needle right at the edge of that box and little back stitch. Now I'm also making sure that my pocket isn't accidentally folded up underneath this as well, that everything's laying flat. Now I'm just going to keep that line in line with my needle and go around. Now the reason that I've shortened my stitch length to a 3 is that I want to land right on these corners as I sew. I don't want to overshoot too much. So you'll see I'm coming up to this corner, drop a few more stitches in, one more, and then I can land right on that corner. Leave my needle in my work, pivot, come down to this one, Awesome. Just one more and then I'm right on it. If my stitch length was longer, when I put that extra one stitch in, I'm going to overshoot. And then my zipper box is going to end up just that little bit bigger than what I want it to be. Now, it's not a huge deal, but as you get better with bag making and better with sewing in general, you want to have good practice. You want to make sure that you're doing things to the best of your ability and that you can. And then one more, and up we go to that top bit, and then back stitch. Cool. So there's our box sewn in. Let's stitch these pins and flip him over to where we can see that center line that we drew. I'm going to grab my seam ripper and I'm going to poke it through the middle right on that line. Then very carefully I'm going to use my seam ripper to cut up to that triangle. Now I'm being very careful not to hit my stitches. I don't want to hit the stitches at the end. If you do, it's fine, just take it back over to the sewing machine and just stitch over that bit again. So right up to those stitches as close as I dare. Cool. Then I'll grab my scissors and I'll cut along those triangles that we put in there. And again, I'll get up as close as I dare without actually hitting the stitches. And then on this end as well. And that way. And I'll just make sure I'm as close as I can be to those stitches along that straight edge. Cool. Now I'll grab my iron. Okay, so now let's flip him over. I'm going to fold down this top edge of the pocket and give it a hit with the iron. And then same thing with the bottom, fold up the bottom edge, give that a hit, and then the sides, fold in that side, bit of a press down, and same on that side. Okay, and that will help us now when we poke our pocket through that hole to the other side. Like that. And then we'll iron it down flat. Now, as flat as you can. It might pucker a little bit on those sides, and a little bit of puckering is okay. Just iron it down as best you can. If it's a lot of puckering, then you might not have snipped close enough to your stitches, and you might need to turn the pocket back out the other way and just snip just a tiny bit closer to those stitches. But this is the inside of the pocket, so again, don't drive yourself nuts, just do the best you can. Cool, like that. So that's what it will look like from the front. I'll iron those puckers out. Okay, looking good. Now, I'm going to grab our zipper and our double-sided tape if you have it. What I'm going to do is grab my double-sided tape and I'm just going to lay a piece at the top and bottom of my zipper, like that. I'm not going to use my good scissors. And a bit at the bottom as well. Like that. Cool. pull that zipper head up to one end, being careful not to pull it off. And then I'm going to pull that backing off. Oh, that bit was easy. Let's see how this bottom bit goes. Yeah, nah. Oh no, I'm all right. Cool. Now I'm laying it so my zipper head is to my left, laying it on the table in front of me. And then I will place my zipper pocket hole over the top, making sure that I have enough tape on each end. I can move that zipper head like that. Get up over it. Nice. So if you don't have double-sided sticky tape, you would just lay that on without the tape, obviously, and then you'd whack some pins in here and in here. But I really like using the tape. It makes life a little easier. Cool. And I can feel that I've got zipper tape here and I've got zipper tape here, so I'm going to be able to sew over that. So let's take that over to the sewing machine and stitch that in. Then while we're there, we're going to fold the pocket up. I'll show you. While we're there, we'll then fold that pocket up and we'll sew that closed. Obviously, if we just sew, we're going to sew through our lining. We don't want to do that. So when we sew, we're going to poke that side in, do up here, fold the top down, do across the top, fold that side in, and then sew down that side. So let's go do that bit, but we want to make sure it's open when we sew around that box. Okay, so I've changed over to a zipper or 1/8 foot to make life a little bit easier. So if you've got a zipper foot, change over, and it might look a little bit different from mine, and that's fine. I'm going to get that zipper head out of the way, and I'm making sure that my pocket is laying flat underneath. It's not caught up anywhere. And I'll start up at one of these corners, a little bit further out from the corner, and I'm just wiggling that zipper tape in. Now I don't want to sew anywhere near that zipper head. So my stitch length is still around a 3, still nice and short. Back stitch, pull that zipper head out of the way, get a little further up and then pull it back down. So I'm lining up the side of this foot with the side of the fabric. So that'll help me stay nice and consistent and nice and close to that edge. And really take your time when you're doing this, so it looks nice and neat. Now I can feel that zipper tape there, so we're going to sew over that, so nice and slow. And one more, pivot with my needle in my work so it doesn't go flying around everywhere, and down along this side. Keeping in mind that I'm watching where that zipper head is. Don't want to hit that with my needle. So I'll stop about there, open it up to get that zipper head out of the way and down to the end. Stop about there, needle down, pivot and down. Now you might not have the needle down function on your sewing machine, and you might not have that one stitch button on your sewing machine, so just use your flywheel, but make sure you always turn your flywheel forward and try not to turn it backwards. So there we are, stitched down around our zipper box. Now let's flip it over and then we'll fold up this pocket, grab some clips and just clip around the edges of that pocket just to hold it all in place as we sew. Work a couple along the top, lining up that edge. Now if you wanted to take it back over and iron it in half and whatever and put the clips on, then that's fine. Okay, now like I said, we are going to fold in these edges. So I'm going to start down, I'll move you back in. start down on one of these folded corners. So I'm going to fold up that lining underneath, and I'm going to be at about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, and my stitch length is around 3.5. Going to back stitch and then up to the top, leave my needle down, pivot, fold that top edge under, so along the top, and I'm just using this finger here to feel where the edge of that lining fabric is too. I don't want to go over that. Make sure that's all down. This edge, pivot, fold that under, down and down. And then little back stitch at the ends. And then we have our zipper pocket all done. How cute is that? And I'm really glad I used that colourful fabric, because that is just so cool when you open it up and see that. Too easy. So there's my handles on and my zipper pocket done. Now we're going to clip all this together, ready for sewing. So I'm going to pop my lining to the side for now and just work on my exterior pieces. I'm going to place them right sides together. So pretty side to pretty side. Grab my clips, and I am going to clip down each side and clip these pieces together like that. Now, when we do this to the lining, remind me to leave a turnout hole. Shocking. Okay, other side. I swear I forget every time, and then I have to unpick and unpick. So clip down that side. And then the bottom. And then we're going to take it over to the sewing machine, and I'm lining up those center snips on my bottom. There we go, and then clip along to the edges. And then we're going to take it over to the sewing machine in a moment once we've clipped the lining, and we're going to sew down those clipped edges. We're not going to sew the corners yet, okay? So just each side and along the bottom. Let's pop that one to the side. Now, same thing with the lining, except we're going to leave a turnout hole. I remembered in that 10 seconds difference, which for me, you know, bit of a goldfish. So I'm going to take my lining piece that doesn't have my zipper pocket on it. I'm going to place it right side down on my table, and I'm going to measure along the bottom from that center snip. Well, let's go 3.5 inches in one direction from that center snip, and 1, 2, 3.5 in the other direction, and just give myself a couple of marks there. And then I'm just going to draw a line across there as well, so it's really obvious, because I'm terrible. So that's what it will look like, okay? Don't drive yourself nuts getting those measurements exact, because it's, you know, it's to leave our turnout hole, so it's not too big of a deal. Okay, let's place these guys right sides together, same as what we just did with our exterior. And same thing. We are going to clip down the sides and along the bottom, and we'll take that over to the sewing machine at the same time. Now, with that turnout hole down the bottom, we're not going to sew that bit. We're going to leave that bit open. So what we'll do is we'll sew just an inch or so up to that line from the end, and then backstitch really well, and then skip over that box that we drew and start again at the other end. Now we want to make sure that we backstitch well when we stop and start, because we're going to be pulling our bag out through that hole, so it will get a bit of wear and tear on it, so we want to make sure that we've backstitched well. And line that up. Cool. Okay, cool bananas. Let's take that over to the sewing machine and stitch all that down. Okay, I'm going to start with my lining, and I'm starting with the side that has that turnout hole drawn on there. I'm starting with that side up. So my stitch length is around 3.5, and I'm going to be at around 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Starting at the top corner there, back stitch, and just following that side down the bottom. And then back stitch. And then I'll start along the bottom edge. About the same, about 3/8 of an inch. We'll back stitch and up to that line where our turnout hole is going to be. And then back stitch, come forward and back stitch again. Cut that thread off and then start up at this end, leaving that nice wide hole, still at about 3/8 of an inch. Back stitch a few times and up to that side and back stitch. And then this last side. Now, if you can see on mine how my pieces aren't, like spot on exact. And that's because we sort of free-handed it, and it's fine. If yours is doing that as well, don't worry about it. She'll be right. And all the way up to this edge, top corner, and back stitch. Cool. Now we'll do the exterior. And same thing, except we're not leaving a turnout hole. So I'm starting at a top corner, about 3/8 of an inch, back stitch, and then all the way down the side, back stitch at this end, and then along the bottom, back stitch, clips are going along for a ride, and then this side. All the way up. Cool. Okay, let's take it back over to the table. Okay, so there's our pieces with the sides and bottom sewn down, and we remember to leave a turnout hole, so it's a good day. Okay, now we are going to box these corners. So what I'm going to do is grab my exterior piece, so there's my bottom corner, going to stick my fingers in that corner bit and pull. So now the bottom seam and the side seam are lined up. My seams are lined up. And I'm going to pull that straight and flat and whack some clips on there. Now that little extra bit that we took at the beginning, remember when we did our corners and we did it 2.5 by 2.5 and then we went up a little bit and took that other corner off? That allows it to sort of sit flush like that. So same thing on this side, fingers in those corners, pull, line up our seams, and then once we're happy with that, whack some clips on. So yeah, taking that little bit extra off just helps your bag sit a little bit flatter when you put it down on the table as well. It's something to do with math, I don't know, it just works. Okay, so there's that one. Same thing with our lining piece. Going to pick it up, place my fingers in that corner, pull it open, and place those seams together. And just sort of wiggle it around until it's sitting nice and flat, and whack some clips on there. Now, when I do this, I'm going to have my side seam pushed one way and the bottom seam pushed the other way. So I'm seating the seam. And then I'll show you in a minute. And then pull it that way. Pull that one open. So whack some clips on. Now I'll show what I mean. So on this side, I've got that seam. This bottom seam is clipped and it's going to the left. So I want it going to the left up this side as well, which means I'll push this seam on the side. I don't know my left and right. It's going right. The bottom seam is going to the right at this end and this end. So my side seam is going to the left. And it's called seating your seam. And it just helps it sit a little bit nicer. Cool. Okay, we're going to take that over to the sewing machine and that over to the sewing machine. And we are going to sew down these seams at about 3/8 of an inch. So many S's and TH's in that one. Let's go do that. Okay, so everything's set up the same. Stitch length is still 3.5 and I want to go at 3/8 of an inch. Now I'm going to seat the seams on my exterior as well. So I'm going to push one seam to the left and one seam to the right. And then on the other end, same thing. I'm going to have that bottom seam going in the same direction as it is on the other side and the other one going the other way. Okay, so around 3/8 of an inch. Back sits really well and just sew across. Use my little purple thing to hold that seam down. And I will do all of them exactly the same as that. And as you go, just make sure that you are catching both sides of your fabric. Last bit and done. Okay, so there's our corners boxed and I'm just getting rid of some loose threads. Now just make sure that you have caught both sides of the fabric on all of your corners, and if you haven't, just pop back over and go over again. Now I'm going to take my exterior piece and I'm going to turn it inside out, which is the right way out. So, oh, that looks pretty. And again, just run your fingers along all those seams and make sure you've caught everything. That is so pretty. How cute is that? Okay, getting excited. Now we're going to stuff this piece into that piece. So our exterior will be right sides out and our lining will be inside out. So when we put them together like this, they are now right sides together. So we're just stuffing that exterior into the lining. Fold those handles down out of the way. And I'm going to line up my center snip of my lining with the center snip on the exterior, which is right in between those two pleats that we made. And then on this side as well. So that middle pleat bit, line that up with that snip, whack a clip on. And then the side seams, the exterior side seam and the lining side seam, line them up. And then on that side as well. And whack a clip on there. Now I have all my points clipped up. I'm just going to go along and whack a heap more clips along all of that top edge. Use as many clips as you need to. There we go. Cool. Now we're going to take that back over to the sewing machine and we are going to sew down all along this top edge. Now if you're working on a domestic machine, you'll be able to just slide that end bit off and then wrap your bag around your machine, which will make life a little bit easier because then you can just turn it as you go. I'm going to stick with the industrial and I'll manage, but you get the drift. Okay, let's go do that. Okay, I'm going to start at one of these top seams and I'm going to be at around 1/4 of an inch or so. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, making sure that my handles are folded down in there and off I go. My stitch length is still around 3.5 and I'm just going to try and stay nice and consistent all the way around. So when I get here and I can see where I stitched on my handles and I basted down those pleats, I want to be further down than those stitches. So if you find you get up to where that is, those stitches are, and you're higher or on them, just come down just a little bit and be just below them. And that way you make sure that you are catching everything. Now as we go, those pleats will be sitting there. So make sure that you're allowing them to sit where they want to sit. And you stay below those existing stitches. Even if you have to go a bit wider, it doesn't matter. Okay, and we'll just continue to work around just like that. Where we started, good back stitch over that seam, and there we go. There it is. Okay, so just have a little look around and make sure it looks like you caught both sides all the way around. Looks pretty good to me. Okay, if you need to, just trim down that seam a little bit. Cool. Now, I'm going to turn it out. So find your turnout hole, grab your exterior piece and just pull it through and flip it out. Oh, I love how easy that is. If you've watched some of my other videos and some of the other bags we've made, this can make you work up a sweat sometimes. But that was super easy. Okay, a few loose threads. And now I've got my iron heading up and we are just going to iron this turnout hole. So poke those edges out, make sure your corners are all good. Lovely. Okay, now turnout hole. Just going to stick my fingers in there like we did with the corners and give it a little tug, just gently. And that will sort of make those ends fold in to where they should be sitting. And then give that a bit of a hit with the iron. And we'll whack some clips on there. And then take that back over to the sewing machine and close up that hole. And we are close to being done. Oh man, I love those colours. Okay, cool. Let's go back over to the sewing machine and sew that closed. Okay, my stitch length is still at 3.5 and I'm going to start a little bit further up than what I think. So my turnout hole is here. I'm going to start a bit further up just to be sure. And I'm going to be at around 1/8 of an inch. So nice and close to that edge. And just adjust as you go if you need to make sure it's nice and neat and that you're catching both sides. Because when we're doing it this close to the edge, it's easy to miss a little bit. So check it before you go back over to the table. And if you missed a little bit, just go over it again. Back stitch, too easy. Okay, there's our turnout hole all stitched up. Now just get rid of any loose threads that you can see. Grab my iron again. Now, while it's still sort of like turned out like that, I'm just going to give this lining just a bit of a hit with the iron, just to sort of give myself a bit of a head start, I guess. And flip it over. Bit of a hit that way. We'll iron it all out again in a minute, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Cool. Now, going to stuff that lining into the exterior. Oh, I love this for such a simple bag, you know, not simple, but you know, we didn't put all the bells and whistles and extra pockets and, you know, all that sort of stuff in it. But oh, how cute is that? Oh, that's so cute. Okay. Now, I'm going to stuff my iron in there and give it a bit of a hit that way. And then we're going to clip down all along this top edge. So I don't want to give the edge too much of a iron because I'll mess up my pleats. Oh, that's so cute. Okay, I'm going to turn the iron off, get that out of the way, grab my clips, and I'm going to clip down along this top edge. So I'm going to sort of roll that seam in my fingers a little bit so that my lining and my exterior piece are sitting even. So neither one is higher than the other. So usually I would go around and iron it, but I just think it's going to be a little bit difficult to do that, and I might actually just be better off rolling it as I go. Love this fabric. I can't remember where this fabric is from. I think I'm going to have to do a bit of a search and post on a few. I think I know where it's from, but again, I don't want to say unless I'm right. So I'll do a little bit of a search, and if I can find where I got it from, I will pop it up on the screen. But the green one is actually just a Spotlight one. So, which is good because Spotlight just put their prices down. And while I think about it, if you're someone that's watched some of my other videos, you'll know that I use buckram interfacing a lot. I really like it. It's a woven interfacing. And I recently did a video on interfacing and was asking people, oh, that's so cute. Was asking people where they get the interfacing from or that type of thing. And I was complaining about buckram being so expensive because it's around $37 a metre. And someone commented, sorry, I really can't remember who it was. I'll put that on the screen too. But that she found it at Remnant Warehouse in Sydney, Australia. And if you bought 10 metres or more, it come down to like $13 a metre, which is almost a third of the price. So Kathy went shopping. So keep that in mind if you're in Australia and if you like buckram. Okay, let's go and stitch that down. So this is another bit where working on a domestic would be really handy because you can just slide it over your free arm like that. But I had to go ahead and use this one, didn't I? Okay, so my stitch length is around 4.5. And I'm going to start on one of these side seams, and because I'm working on a flatbed, I'm just going to have to squish it all open. And I want to be stitching from the top. And I want to be around 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. And with that longer stitch length, like I said, around 4.5, because we're top stitching. Now I'm going to back stitch a little bit. And then I'm making sure that my handles are up. They're not folded down like that. And I'm just going to be as consistent as I can with that 1/8 of an inch. Being careful not to let the bag get underneath and taking it easy over these pleats and making sure that my pleats are sitting nice and flat before I stitch over them. And then I will just work my way around. And if you've got one of these, use it, especially for those center pleats, to hold them where you want them to be so they don't kick up and then get sewn over. stitch. Cool. Let's go have a look. So there we go. Now I've gone ahead and given it a bit of a hit with the iron, being careful not to iron out those pleats, just to put them where they want to be. But this bag is just such a great example of how bag making doesn't have to be super difficult all the time. It's fun to do a nice big bag with a heap of pockets and extra bits and pieces and everything else. But it's also really nice just to whip something up occasionally. And even though this one was only a couple of pieces of fabric and, you know, that one sort of zipper pocket, we are left with something that we've made that is really cute, really usable. I will quite happily use this one. I'll quite happily use all of them, but you know what I mean. And would also make a great gift, or would be a good saleable item at markets, or if you've got an Etsy shop or whatever. Yeah, I'm super stoked with that. Okay, well, I hope you are too. I hope you had fun, and I hope you're really happy with what you made. If you are, and you make it, then send me an email with photos of your make. I really, really love that. That's really cool when people send me photos of bags that they've made. And if you haven't liked and subscribed already, then what are you waiting for? Get on it and go and check out my channel for some more great content. Okay, guys, thanks for coming along today. Have a good one. And remember, it's only fabric. We can always buy more. Okay, bye. Bugger.